Let me sit with you for a moment, quietly, the way I would sit across your kitchen table on a slow afternoon. There is something I want to tell you gently, something many older adults never hear until it is almost too late. You do not need to face the legal world alone. You do not need to sign papers you do not understand. And you do not have to move through the next chapter of life feeling unprotected. You are allowed to breathe. You are allowed to take your time. And you are allowed to ask, is this really what I need? I learned that again the day I met Eleanor, a soft-spoken woman of 74, who kept her important papers in a floral tin box because it reminded her of her mother. She invited me into her living room with such grace it almost felt like stepping onto sacred ground. She told me she felt ashamed, not because she had done anything wrong, but because she felt behind. She said, I know there are documents I should have, but I never knew where to start. I always thought I had more time. Her voice wavered at the word time. And in that moment, I understood what she feared most. Not illness, not money, not death. Confusion, being unprepared, being pressured, being left without choices. That fear is something I see often. Not because older adults are weak, but because the system has a way of hiding the truth behind paperwork and urgency. Let me tell you the truth. There are 12 legal documents that every senior deserves, not because the world demands it, but because they give you control when life becomes complicated. They protect your wishes, your home, your dignity, and the people you love. Eleanor had heard of some of them. Others were completely new to her, but all of them mattered. And as we walked through them together, one by one, I watched her shoulders settle. I watched her breathing deepen. That is why I am sitting here with you now. You deserve that same peace. Eleanor and I started with the one most people recognize but rarely understand, a will. A simple word, yet often surrounded by fear. She whispered. I kept putting it off because it made me feel like I was planning for the end. I told her the truth. A will is not about dying. A will is about deciding. It is about choosing what happens instead of leaving behind a storm for your children or your siblings to untangle. Without a will, the state decides who gets what, and the state does not know your story. It does not know the ring your husband gave you on your 20th anniversary. It does not know which niece visits every Sunday or which nephew has struggled quietly for years. A will brings order where there would otherwise be arguments and heartbreak. You are allowed to choose what you leave and to whom you leave it. You are not wrong for wanting clarity. The law was built to protect that right, even when no one tells you that. But Eleanor's eyes softened most when we talked about the second document. A living will. Not about possessions, but about your voice. A living will tells the world what you want if you cannot speak for yourself. It protects you from aggressive treatments you do not want. It ensures you receive the kind of care that reflects your values, not someone else's fear. Eleanor told me about a friend who was kept on machines for weeks because her family could not agree. They loved her, she said, but they did not know what she wanted. That uncertainty caused more suffering than the illness itself. And this is where fear meets the law. The law gives you the right to decide these matters early, calmly, and on your own terms. You are allowed to say yes to comfort. You are allowed to say no to invasive treatment. A living will is not a burden. It is a shield. And once you create it, you give peace not only to yourself, but to everyone who loves you. Then we move to powers of attorney, documents that sound frightening but are actually lifelines. Eleanor hesitated at first. She said, I do not want to give someone control over me. I looked her in the eyes and said, that is not what a power of attorney does. A financial power of attorney lets someone you trust step in only when you need help, not before. Without it, the court may appoint someone you do not know to handle your bills, your home, even your accounts. With it, you choose your protector. And a medical power of attorney is just as important. It names the person who will speak to doctors when you cannot. But here is what they do not explain. Your chosen person cannot override your wishes. Their job is to carry out your decisions, not replace them. You are allowed to choose someone who listens, someone steady, someone who honors your dignity. You are not wrong for wanting safety without surrender. That is exactly what these documents provide. Eleanor had heard the term medical directive before, but no one had ever explained it in plain language. She thought it was the same as a living will. It is not. A medical directive gives detailed instructions for specific situations, not just end-of-life care, but also breathing tubes, antibiotics, resuscitation preferences, and the kind of comfort measures you want. It removes guesswork. It removes guilt. It says, if this happens, here is what I want. And you would be surprised how much relief that brings to families torn between hope and fear. The medical system rarely slows down long enough to ask what matters to you. A medical directive speaks for you with clarity, calm, and respect, and you are allowed to have that. Somewhere around this point, Eleanor reached for my hand. She said, "I never knew I was allowed to give instructions this clearly. I always thought the doctors decided." I smiled. "Let me tell you the truth. You have more say than you realize. The medical world may feel loud and complicated, but the law is quiet and firm. Your wishes guide everything when they are written down. The system failed to explain that. You did not fail." We then talked about something that made her eyebrows rise. Bank authorizations. It is one of the most overlooked documents, yet one of the most powerful. A bank authorization lets someone access specific financial tasks without giving them full control. It is narrower than a financial power of attorney and sometimes easier to use. Any seniors assume that because they trust their adult children, nothing else is required. But banks are not built on trust. They are built on paperwork. Without the right document, they may freeze accounts, reject transactions, or deny assistance during emergencies. I have seen older adults lose precious time trying to solve simple financial matters because no authorization was in place. You are allowed to make banking easier on yourself. You are allowed to name someone who can help without taking over. It is not a sign of weakness. It is a sign of preparation. Then came the subject that made Eleanor's voice grow quiet: legal guardianship or financial management. She feared even saying the words. She said, "I do not ever want to lose control of my own life." I nodded slowly. No one does. But here is what they do not explain. When you choose your own guardianship plan in advance, you are keeping control, not losing it. You are choosing the person who will step in only if you truly can no longer make decisions. If you do not choose, the court will, and courts decide based on paperwork, not personal history. Choosing your own guardian does not mean you expect frailty. It means you respect your future self enough to protect her. You are allowed to choose someone gentle, someone patient, someone who will honor your values when your own voice grows quieter. This is not surrender, this is foresight, and it is one of the greatest acts of self-protection you can make. As we continued, we came to the final and perhaps most emotionally charged topic: what you should and should not sign. Eleanor laughed softly and said, "This is where I always get nervous. I do not want to be difficult." I told her something I want you to hear too. You are not difficult. You are not delaying. You are protecting your dignity. You never need to sign anything on the spot. Not medical forms, not financial agreements, not home repair contracts, not admission forms for assisted living, not papers someone pushes across a counter with urgency. Let me tell you the truth. Pressure is a tactic. Confusion is a tactic. Speed is a tactic. You are allowed to say, "I need time to read this." You are allowed to say, "I want someone to look at this with me." You are allowed to take that paper home and sit with it until it makes sense. You do not owe anyone your signature until you feel calm and clear. And if someone tells you otherwise, they are not acting in your best interest. You are not wrong for wanting to understand what you are agreeing to. The law was built to support informed choices, not forced ones. As we finished reviewing everything, Eleanor leaned back, almost stunned by her own relief. She said, "I always thought these documents were for other people. I thought I had waited too long." I looked at her with the same steady compassion I offer you now. It is never too late to protect your future. It is never too late to regain control. You did not fall behind. You were simply not shown the path. Yet here you are, stepping onto it with courage. And here is what I want you to hold on to. Every document you create is an act of peace. Every choice you make is a declaration that your life, your wishes, and your dignity matter. You are allowed to take this at your pace. You are allowed to ask questions until everything becomes clear, and you are allowed to protect yourself without apology. If hearing this brought you even a little comfort, share it with someone you love, someone who might be quietly worrying the way Eleanor once did. And if you feel ready, tell your story. Someone else may need to hear it. Someone else may need the reminder that they are not too late and they are not alone. Stay with me. This part matters more than you think. You have a right to clarity. You have a right to protection, and you have a right to move into the next chapter of your life with steadiness, confidence, and peace.